We've passed the halfway point, and now Oklahoma and New Mexico are next to check off the list. We didn't have high hopes for these sections, but they sure did surprise us. Our first night's camp spot was just 10 miles from where we left off last time doing the Arkansas section. Joining us on this section are a few Kentucky locals, Tommy and his wife Megan from Overland, Kentucky. They're driving their nicely built out 4Runner on this trip. Another recognizable face is Braxton from Welcome to the Outdoors joining us. He'll be riding along with us. If you don't know who he is, he's one of the most talented videographers out there. And finally, the old man, my dad Dean. He's really the one that got me excited at a young age about the outdoors. He and Braxton both would be sleeping out of tents. A quick tip for overlanding on the Trans-American Trail is pack up most of your camp the night before, so you have less to do in the morning and you can just get on the road. On the first day, we had a little over 240 miles to go. "10 miles to the start." Where the gravel turns to clay is State Line Road and the beginning of the Oklahoma section. Yes, most of these sections will be gravel and road, but we still air down to have a smoother ride and turn our shocks to soft. But we're only going down to 20 psi. For most of this day, it's going to look like a mix between Kentucky, Tennessee, and the Ozarks. The leaves have come out and the water is clear. The map had a bridge here at some point, but clearly it's gone and we're not doing that water crossing. A mile down the road was the new looking bridge and our little detour. A reoccurring theme on this trip will be dust, dust, dust everywhere. This cuts through some very pretty country back roads. I'll say this for Oklahoma, they know how to maintain their gravel roads. Most of the gravel that we encounter on this trip are smoother than a lot of the highways across the country.
Tigers.
After a quick lunch in Salina, we cross Lake Hudson. Just a mile and a half after Lake Hudson, we come across our first obstacle. Luckily, we were able to roll it over off the road. Another reoccurring theme of this trip are straight, endless roads. We also came across a surprising amount of loose cattle. Another big surprise was all of the burnt land, miles and miles of it. Where the trail came up to the top of the state, it got a little bit more windy, but really opened up. In some of these sections, we didn't see houses for 30 to 40 minutes, just cattle gate after cattle gate. Saying it was windy is an understatement. On a couple of parts of this trail, the right side of the road is Kansas, and the left side of the road is Oklahoma. We would also come around a turn and see what looked like fire. We would think they'd be just over the top of the ridge, but they would be miles away and massive. After a few more long straight sections, our second night of camp would find us just outside Newkirk at an abandoned campground. We were able to use the Red Vision and ARB compressor to clean off a lot of the dust before it got inside of our vehicles. After camp was set up, I got the drone up to check out the area. This place was really eerie. It looked like somewhere out of The Last of Us. And while checking out the river around us, Mother Nature gave us a little show. After some adult Lunchables, aka trail charcuteries, just hung around the fire, had a few beverages, and relaxed. Day number 2 started at 7:30 a.m. Today we had 236 miles to go. We had an awesome small town breakfast at the Broadway Cafe in a neighboring small town on the way. These are the sections that we dreaded. the endless straightaways that sometimes went on for 60 to 70 miles. But our dread was immediately alleviated with how vast and beautiful the heartland of our country is. The land was laid out in 1 mile square grids, with most of the time not having any stop signs. But it being so flat and being able to see so far, you could see if somebody was coming. About a third of the way into the day, the landscape changed to what looked like a high plains desert, something out of Dances with Wolves. After another 60 or 70 miles of straight road, we ended up in Beaver, Oklahoma, where we had an awesome Mexican food dinner. Just north of Beaver is the Beaver Dunes City Park, a perfect little oasis with showers and everything. This city park is over 300 acres of dunes, but primarily has one main dune shooting right down the middle of the land. This little oasis was a great place to camp. The next morning found us in a little town with a pancake house before a full day of straightaways. Some parts of these straightaways cut through wild sections of desert before going right back to farmland. There was even some sections where the farmer just said, "Nah, we don't need that road there," and they plowed straight through it and planted the crops. From watching Mountain State Overland's recap of this section, we determined past Boise City there's not much gas to be had, so we filled up our armadillo bags just in case. Past Boise City, it also started to really dry out. There's been a lot of dead trees and almost no vegetation growth across most of Oklahoma's plains. But near the New Mexico border, everything was dead. That fence line in front of us is New Mexico. One more mile and one more turn, and we're in the state. The New Mexico section of the trail is only 71.5 miles. But this is really where the trail starts to shine. Immediately we see cactus everywhere, and pronghorns. Herds everywhere. Scattered over the landscape were dozens of abandoned stone homes. The first half of New Mexico was pretty featureless. You'd be going through 25, 30 cattle gates and then come across a small homestead and then repeat. But near the top of the state, you drop into a valley filled with iconic New Mexico scenery. This was my first time driving in this type of landscape. I wish this section wasn't so short. Quick side note, when you air down at 900 feet and go up to 5,000 feet, you gain about 10 psi. I was curious why we were riding a little rougher than when we left. About a mile and a half before we hit the Colorado border, we were surprised with a perfect little New Mexico goat trail leading us out of the valley we just spent the last 2 hours in. At the top, we parked and took a little bit of time to soak in the view of the valley we had just traversed through. Another quick tip, don't wear sandals in the desert. Even came across a little cow that didn't really have a chance at life. After a mile drive, we were in Colorado. This section ends in Branson, Colorado. On this trip, we drove for 10 to 12 hour days for 3 days, went a distance of 741 miles and an elevation change of 5,312 feet. Heading back to Kentucky, we couldn't help but feel a little bit disappointed looking over at the snow-capped mountains in Colorado, but we also know we get to tackle that in the next section of the Trans-American Trail.